Hiya! Live action Whisper again, this time with the last big talent to talk about. For the record, if there's anything you guys want me to cover, talk about, ramble about, whatever it may be, let me know. I'm more than happy to ramble for 10 minutes about something. But this is the last one. We already talked about Spatter, we already talked about Exsanguinate. So, Sudden Demise is the last one on our list of the new stuff. We also talked about all the small ones. If you haven't seen that video, all the small changes, including the Fan of Knives changes, Crimson Tempest, Arterial, all that. So, Sudden Demise. First off, bleed damage increased by 10%. That's a passive. It's good. It's really good. But also, targets that are below 35% health instantly bleed out and take fatal damage when the remaining bleed damage you would deal to them exceeds 200% of their remaining health. It's a lot of words. It's a lot to get through. But essentially what this means is, let's take an example of this guy. So for the sake of argument, I'm going to just leave out the 35% health. If I wanted to one-shot this guy with Sudden Demise, then I would need twice of his health. So he has about 900,000 health, which would mean I would need 1.8 million bleed damage remaining on him in order for Sudden Demise to one-shot. Essentially, that would mean if I have 1.8 million worth of effective damage, I get 900,000 back, right? So it's still a waste. It's still 50% of your damage is gone. So I will show the effect real quick. So if I just roll up to this guy and I do a big rupture here, then I should be able to just turn around. And the moment he hits 35, we should be seeing some stuff. Come on. Tick. Die. Okay, there you go. So you'll see Sudden Demise triggered on that. Dealt about 33,000 damage. We'll see it in a AoE pack here with Crimson Tempest up as well. So I'll just pull a couple mobs here just for Crimson Tempest stack size. And then as I turn my back, you'll see, hopefully, without dying, please. So that guy ticked out, this guy ticks out. This is an absorb shield, so it actually counts. I have to kind of damage it off. But we apply some bleeds, and once he hits below 35, you'll see, and big pop, right? Big pop. Big pop, does damage. Pretty cool stuff. Okay, the issue with this is, for one, in higher keys where a lot of your bleed damage is not getting wasted at the end of a pull, right? Like right here, those guys instantly died. That guy instantly died. So Sudden Demise looks really good because this is a normal dungeon and I'm doing like 12-15% of their health instantly, right? In a bigger key where mobs don't die, this might be an issue because you're only ever doing like 2% of their health. And that could be good, right? Don't get me wrong, that could be good, but it's still inefficient based on your bleeds, so you're never actually wanting to take advantage of the effect. It just happens to proc, right? Like if you Crimson Tempest on a chain pull, you're Crimson Tempesting because of the new mobs. You're not Crimson Tempesting because of the mobs that are dying. Those are already dying. You don't care about them. You're not going to care about them. The Crimson Tempest just happens to hit them, and therefore Sudden Demise procced. That creates an issue of you don't want to play around it, which makes it bad, but it also can't really be fixed. Now, don't get me wrong, the numbers tuning here can be fixed, right? You can just make the bleed damage 30%, and now it's really good. But specifically the effect, if I make the effect 100% of remaining health, right? That would mean that the Sudden Demise kills enemies based on 100% of my effective bleed damage. So I would not be losing any damage, it would just be killing if I have any remaining damage left. Okay, fair enough. What if it's still too weak though, right? What if it's still too weak? Because that still doesn't mean you want to snipe them. That just means that you kind of just throw your bleeds out on everything, and if it procs, it procs. Well, hypothetically, let's go lower than 100, right? Let's go to 50%. If it does fatal damage based on 50% of their remaining health, that means that I'm getting twice the effect of my bleeds, right? That means I'm getting double the effective damage of my bleeds. You can think of this kind of like a Deathmark effect, right? Deathmark duplicates your bleeds, so they deal twice as much damage. This at 50% would be the same thing, right? If it kills them. It's a one-time effect that kills them. But that would mean that I would need to snipe everything, right? Like, I see a dying target, and I'm like, ooh, me want big sudden demise, ooga booga, me go bleed. I don't know if that's the gameplay, right? I don't know if that's the move. That doesn't sound really that great. I don't know if people would enjoy that too much. So, it's kind of a difficult fix. Kind of a difficult fix. I don't really know what to do about it. Yeah, I mean, PTR doesn't have Mythic Plus, right? So Mythic Plus isn't testable. So I don't actually know how good this is. The only thing I have kind of to do would be maybe like take a tank and a healer and 3-man a Mythic 0, or like get a 5-man group and take off half our gear so we're at the item level of a Mythic 0 and treat it as if it were an M+. There's a lot of weird stuff happening, right? Like, testing this ability is very difficult. Right now, my gut feeling says this thing is really weak. It's really... Okay. Caveat, right? I can't get ahead of myself. It is really strong in very specific situations. It's very strong in, for example, a normal dungeon where you are clapping all of the enemies, right? I am obliterating these guys. They hit 30% HP, boom, they die. Great. If you're doing a +3 and you're overgeared for that +3 and you're just helping out your guildmate, Sudden Demise will crank, right? Don't get me wrong. This will be a cranker talent. Because now you're not losing any bleed damage. Well, you are, but not as much. So this thing's gonna insta-kill things from like 20% HP, and you're gonna be feeling great. In keys where it actually matters, though, you have pulls that last like a minute and a half, and this is essentially giving you 50% value of a Rupture and a Garrote and a Crimson Tempest, right? Because it's 200% of their remaining, so it's half value of your bleeds. So in a minute and a half pull, if it procs on everything at maximum efficiency, you would be getting 8 seconds of Crimson Tempest, 14 seconds of Rupture, and 9 seconds of Garrote on each target. Which would be like not that great, right? Not that crazy. Even if those 3 end up being like 50% of your damage, they're not, but hypothetically, if they end up being 50% of your damage and you're only getting half a cast's worth, and you're doing that over like a minute and a half fight, well, for a minute and a half fight, that would mean that you would need what? You need like 6 Garrotes. And you're now getting half a Garrote, so that's 1/12 of your total Garrote in that pull. And that would mean if it's 1/12 of half your damage, it'd be 1/24 of your damage. So just hypothetically, in this situation where you have a minute and a half long pull and you get maximum value, you're looking at like 5% from this talent, max, not counting the bleed damage increase. Like just the effect would be like 4 or 5% based on the napkin math. Capstone doing 4% of my damage, and then just a kind of a bleed damage increase on top of it, that doesn't feel great. That doesn't feel great. But the other problem is that like it's really point efficient because it's just an offshoot of Indiscriminate Carnage, right? So you're gonna get this for 1 point, which is basically free, and like your alternatives are maybe a point in Poison Bomb, which actually probably is around 4 or 5%. Tiny Toxic Blade, which is pretty good. You could get like Deathmark. Not Deathmark. Goddamn. Kingsbane or Dragon Tempered Blades, like another capstone. You could get Sepsis or Bone Spike. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, and like if it were 100% of the remaining health, obviously that would double the effect, and now we'd be talking about like 8, which is good. It's fine. 8% is probably fine. But that's literally hard capped at the minimum value without warping the gameplay, right? Because anything lower than 100, like I said, is increasing your dot efficiency, and increasing your dot efficiency is a warp to gameplay because now you're going to snipe on purpose. So I don't think that that's sort of the intention. So 100% is the actual floor, right? Anything lower than that, and the gameplay crashes. So 100% being the floor means that they cannot tune it lower than 100, and at 100, right now, based on the napkin math, I'm gonna say it's right, like 8 to 10%, which would be fine. But again, if that's the floor, and like it doesn't work on bosses, right? Well, I mean, it works on bosses, but realistically, with how large of a health pool bosses have, I mean, this is worthless, right? This is absolutely worthless. So it's only an AoE talent. The effect itself procs once to fatally kill enemies, which is cool. It's like a mini touch of death. But everything is kind of stacked against it in that regard. And if Spatter gets tuned to be really good, like if Spatter is our main AoE alongside Crimson Tempest, and Carnage and Garrote and Rupture take a backseat in terms of like just being energy generation, I don't really know if there's a leg to stand on. It's gonna be a little bit suspicious, but I don't know. We'll see. Arterial Precision increases bleed damage done. This does work. We've tested this, as does Deathmark, duplicating bleeds, so that works as well. So there are ways to sort of cheese it, right? You could Arterial Precision and then get more value out of this. I'm not convinced right now. Right now, this is pretty uninspiring in terms of just like the effect of it, damage-wise. The effect, like the design, is insanely cool. Not knocking on that. Insanely cool design. But the tuning of it is surprisingly difficult, in my opinion. And I don't really have a good way to fix it, because you can't just have people one-shotting things at like 5% HP when they walk into a plus 25. But maybe this is just there as like a low-key type of talent. Like you take this if you're spamming plus 10s for whatever currency you need from a plus 10. I don't know if that's really a well-designed capstone in that regard, if that's what it ends up being. But we'll see. I don't know. Tuning will tell, I guess. Anyways, this has been a long ramble. Longer than Exsanguinate, and this wasn't even that interesting. Have a good one. Hope it helped. Bye-bye. I really need to learn to shut up, because this is not it. I cannot ramble this long on everything. Bye-bye.